But, I mentioned about typically we don't go to the Roman Catholic churches. We do visit a lot of the sites, but typically we don't go into the church, but there are a few we do go into. The Church of All Nations, the one on the Sea of Galilee at...
You talk about Mount of Beatitude? We don't go there.
No. On the Sea of Galilee.
Magdala?
Magdala. We do.
Super good. We go into that one at Magdala. We go into Church of All Nations on the Mount of Olives. Once in a while, we go into the one in Capernaum with the plexiglass bottom. We rarely ever go into the one on Mount of Beatitudes because the nuns hate Roni.
And in Jerusalem, we don't go.
In Jerusalem, we don't go either. But the reason, and Roni had mentioned, most of these Catholic churches came during the time of Constantine, the Emperor of Rome, in the 4th century AD, around 325, when he and his mother Helena when she traveled to the Holy Land, and she this is the spot, and it was a little more of a spiritualistic kind of a thing rather than an archaeological thing. And she goes, I just feel like this may be it, so they threw up a big church. Super cool, super nice, but probably not the right spot overall. But we typically don't go in them because there's no significance to the churches that are built in the Roman Catholics or the Franciscans or whatever. The Greek Orthodox, we don't go in because typically they're not, and St. Peter Gallicanto,
right,
on Mount Ophel. So we do go into a few because there are some significant excavations that are involved in them, but typically we don't go in them because there's no big biblical archaeological aspect to them. It's just a church based on religion, not an archaeological find. So that's typically why we don't go into the Roman Catholic churches. You ready? Okay, where are we going today, Sally?
Let's go to Tel Dan.
Let's go to Tel Dan.
I like it.
Okay. Where are we going next?
So
Beautiful.
You showed a picture of the Jordan River, and the Jordan River. When people see it for the first time, they're a little disappointed because you hear Jordan River, you expect to see the Mississippi, and then and you see something that is half dry, hardly flows anywhere, and in Hebrew we call it Yarden, which comes from the word Yarad. That means it flows down. It flows down all the way from Dan down to the Sea of Galilee, and then from the Sea of Galilee, the Yarden, the Jordan River, flows down all the way to the Dead Sea. We block the Jordan River somewhere, but Jordan has 3 headwaters, and this is one of them at the Dan. And usually we like to show all 3 of them. 2 of them we walk through, and the 3rd we just drive above. And that's it. So the Jordan River really, it's interesting. It's interesting to see it sometimes if we have a youth tour, like we had a youth tour with Josh, whatever we had. Did we go floating on the Jordan River, or did we take canoes?
I think that was the time before you guys.
Yeah.
He took the youth group, the high schoolers from the church, on a tour. They camped in the desert, rode camels. They rafted down the River Jordan. They did all kinds of cool zip line stuff.
Archaeological dig.
Some people think that.
How come you don't let us do that?
Some people
Too
think
old?
Some people think the Jordan River is named after a well-known basketball player from Chicago Bulls. We call it Yarden, and Jordan is the English way of pronunciation, but it's every time when we cross the Jordan or whatever, it's meaningful because after all, that's a baptismal site, and that's the same river the children of Israel are crossing in order to come to the Promised Land. Okay, Tel Dan. Yep, it's it's the northern city that we visit. It's a national park, and it's a lot of water, a lot of trees. Beautiful walk through the park, and besides being very biblical, it It's right on the border with Lebanon. Lebanon. One of the reasons that we don't do the tour this year is because it's right on the border. Lebanon is. I'll talk later on about the situation in Israel if you want me to, but it's we can from there we can see the whole south part of Lebanon, and on top of that there's a beautiful teaching that takes place in. And that's when I'm going to lead this.
Here's the pathway that
There
we
is?
go down. So when we say that it's not handicap accessible, you can see that we take quite a path through here. Just a little sample of what
Yeah.
the
It's
walking is
amazing.
like.
It's heavily forested, trees everywhere, and there's springs that bubble up out of the ground all over the place. And so as you're walking along, all of a sudden water will just start rushing down. And this is one of the three headwaters of the Jordan, the Jordan. It's Dan, Banyas, and the Hasbani. Right up in this area, there are three areas that water starts coming up out of the ground, typically from Mount Hermon, and then it comes together to make one flow, the Jordan River, that flows all the way down to the Dead Sea, the lowest spot on earth.
Can you
Go back just a moment, Sally.
Okay. The computer has to
Yeah.
cooperate. It'll come.
Pause.
This is this is for me a very powerful point in Dan because we found out that there was a city there by the name of Laish. And the city of Laish was a city that they decided to protect themselves by building a wall. Interesting enough, they didn't try to find any stones in order to build the wall. They built it from mud bricks. And they built a cast, they put the mud and some water and some salt, and a secret ingredient that we have no idea what was it, they turned that brick into a hard as a rock. And they built themselves a wall, and then in those days, a city is 400 people. So you can't build 6 gates because you need people to protect the gate, so everybody's going to be the gate. So every city had only one gate. And this city, and when they started to dig the city, the guy who was running the excavation, he was trying to estimate where could be the gate. And then very close to the gate, there's a road that we call it the road to Damascus. Does it ring a bell? And he said, okay, this is the closest place to the road of Damascus. I'm going to dig over there. He started to dig, and poof, he hit the city gate. And it was amazing because this is the city gate right over here. Now it's covered with scaffolding. Now we don't have scaffolds anymore. Everything is open. And we found the gate to the city. And why is it so meaningful? Because in Genesis 14, it says that there was a battle between 9 cities in the country, between 4 from the south, 5 from the north. And in the midst of the battle, they captured someone who was walking with his sheep and goats. And this was Abraham's nephew Lot. And the Bible tells us they brought him up. And when Abraham found out that they captured Lot, he built a small army of 318 people. Now, think about it. It's a big army. I mean, the whole city is 400, right? And he came to the gate of the city. He walked to the gate, and he released Lot, and he walked back to his place. And the interesting enough is that many times people come to Mr. Roni, with all respect, come on, be serious. You talk about archaeology, you talk about history, but come on, there's no evidence from the time of Abraham. The whole story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's up in the air, right? No, not really serious. And I said, not really serious? Here's a gate from the time of Abraham. The only gate he could walk through in order to release Lot was through this gate. And this gate we found it after 3,800 years. This gate is 3,800 years old from the time of Abraham. So if someone is going to come to me and tell me there are no evidence from the time of Abraham, I'll send him right away to what he called Abraham Gate.
And not just that, but the gate that is there is absolutely amazing because it's an arch.
You cannot see it here, but
You
yes.
think the Romans built the arch?
No.
3,800 years ago, there's an arch. You can't see it in this view, but when the scaffolding's gone, you can see the reconstruction there. But anyway, you can see the mud bricks making the arch. It's absolutely fantastic. And not only the story of Lot from Genesis chapter 14 with Abraham and Lot with the 4 kings to the north, the 5 kings to the south, and how he brought them back to Sodom and Gomorrah, but we also have the story of the divided kingdom. Who was the 3rd king of Israel? Anybody? Saul, David, and? It's not a trick question. Solomon, the 3rd king of Israel. Solomon. Now, Solomon's reign was for 40 years, just like Saul and David. So from 970 to 930 BC, Solomon reigned as the 3rd king of Israel under what's called the United Kingdom. At the death of Solomon at 930 BC, the kingdom of Israel was divided. Solomon's son, Rehoboam, became the first king of the southern kingdom called Judah, made up of 2 tribes, Benjamin and Judah. Solomon's servant, Jeroboam, became the first king of the northern 10 tribes called Israel. And so this began what was called the divided kingdom. And I think it paints an interesting picture, especially here at Tel Dan, because we do know that Jeroboam, according to the book of Judges, would subsequently lead Israel, the 10 northern tribes, into idolatry. Read Judges chapter 18. So he led them into idolatry. He made 2 golden calves. Remember the golden calves? One here at Dan and one at Bethel, or the house of God, just north of Jerusalem, about 5 or 6 miles north of Jerusalem. And it paints an incredible picture of the divided kingdom as it pertains to sin. What do you mean? Well, sin always divides. It divides what? Well, it divides us from God. It causes a separation between us and God. In Isaiah 59, 1 and 2, it says, "The hand of the Lord's not short that he cannot reach down and save, nor is his ear heavy that he cannot hear. But it's our iniquities that separate us from God. It's our sin that causes him not to hear us." And that was really the byproduct of Jeroboam's sin in thinking that he did not want anybody from the 10 northern tribes to go back to Judah, to Jerusalem, to worship God in the temple, as was required. Remember, there were 7 feasts in Judaism. Not were, but is. There's 7 feasts in Judaism. 3 of those 7 feasts require mandatory attendance for every able-bodied Jew, according to Deuteronomy 16:16. They had to go to Jerusalem. But Jeroboam, he didn't want anybody from the northern tribes to go to the southern tribes. He said these were my people. The interpretation is very simple and very straightforward, but the application becomes pretty important. Because, I've seen a lot of pastors and heard them talking about different things. They say, well, at my church. At your church? In Matthew 16, Jesus said, "I will build my church." And when we say my church or my people or pretty soon, I think I know what we mean when we say that, but pretty soon we start to believe that. Like, no, these are my people. No, this is my church. Hey, are you kidding me? This is God's church. We're his people. Psalm 24:1 says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof and all that dwell there within." 1 Corinthians 6:19 says, "We're not even our own. We've been bought with a price." So it's an important principle for us in life because it's not ours. It all came from God. It all belongs to God. And we hold it all with an open hand, because if we don't, God's going to pry our little fingers open, and please believe me when I tell you it hurts. But when he does, he'll remove what's there. And I found in my life, when I hold everything with an open hand and say, "Okay, God, it all belongs to you. It all is yours. You take it. You can leave it, add to it, take away from it. Whatever you want to do, God." That's typically when God says, "Okay, now that I know you really don't want it, keep it. It's yours." And I think there's some valuable lessons. Oh, look at the arch.
Yep, amazing.
Look at that.
And you see the gate is filled with dirt.
Yeah, this is the schmutz.
Yeah.
So the arch, the Romans simply perfected it. They didn't invent it. Here is an example of it almost 4,000 years from today.
Oh, here's the gate that they went through to the other side.
Yeah,
of
so here's the arch.
The arch.
And then some schmutz, and they dug through.
We filled it up with dirt so it won't collapse. And you can see and you can see some of this is the arch. Yeah, it's amazing. And the bricks, we have no idea what they used. We are trying to figure out what was the secret ingredient they used in order to make it so hard, and we couldn't figure it out. Most likely it was there, it evaporates and gone. But it's very interesting. So there's only one gate, amazing. And through this gate came Abraham. And this was so amazing.
In fact, when we're at Dan, he takes us up to a place where they believe maybe Jeroboam had an altar where he was making sacrifices to the golden calf. Because through the excavations, there's a big flat area with these big steps leading up to it. And most archaeologists believe that's where the altar was. And when we're standing there, you can see Lebanon, you can see Syria. It all comes right there. In fact, you can throw a rock and you're in Syria or Lebanon. It's just right there.
The only signs over there that says, please don't go through, it's a border, or you saw the sign, danger mine. The only one that cannot really read the signs are the cows. So sometimes we hear poof, and there's a flying cow. But that's the only thing that really, yep. So this is the path that we walked. We walked by the water. It's an amazing walk.
Yeah, it's a great place. The tree, and there was a fire there, and it burned everything down. It's very sad, but it's all growing back now. So
nature
it's
restores itself.
It's a real beautiful nature reserve. Trees, thick, lush, foresty kind of thing.
You could see why the tribe didn't want to go back to Jerusalem because it was a much easier thing to just stay there.
Yeah, remember Sally said from Joshua chapter 19 that the tribe of Dan was given the area of Joppa, but they settled here in the furthest north of Israel, here in Dan. And when you're there, you can see why the water, the trees, the wildlife, it's a beautiful nature reserve.
And that's what caused the editor of the Bible, because when we read Genesis 14, it says that Abraham went to the city of Dan. But at the time of Abraham, there was no Dan. It was a different city by the name of Laish. But it's not a mistake. It's not. We call it a little chronological oops. It's like someone is going to say the city of New York was established in 1770. It's a great statement, but it's not true because there was no New York. It was New Amsterdam first. So it's a chronological oops. But this is the altar and the temple that was built by Jeroboam in order to prevent the people of the north to go back to Jerusalem. They said, oh, they might go to Jerusalem. They're going to meet their cousin, friends, and they said, let's rejoin together. So here it is. This is the altar. It wasn't built for metal in those days, but you see the size.
Wow.
By the way, every time when I see altar, in Jewish way of thinking, let's say I walk in the street and I see my friend James. I say, James, how are you? It's so great to see you. And I give him a little tap on the shoulder, and he's going to lose his balance, and he's going to fall down and poof, hit his head on the sidewalk, and I killed him. And I say, oy vey, I killed my best friend. But in Jewish way of thinking, there was an eye for an eye. And now someone from his family is going to chase me and kill me because I killed him by mistake. In the Jewish way of thinking, there is a way of maybe to give you a chance. You run to 6 cities over the country, and there is an altar like you saw, and you hold the horn of the altar, and then by holding that, nobody can touch you, nobody can harm you. And then if I can explain the elderly of the city that I didn't really mean to kill James, I just want to give him a little tap on the shoulder, and he lost his balance. If they accept my version, I can stay in the city all my life. Nobody is allowed to harm. And I can leave the city, when the high priest dies. Then everything is overruled and I come back. But the horns are very important on the top of the altar in Judaism.
Many times we read people grabbing the horns of the altar.
That's right.
And that's the purpose. It's like they're safe because they went to the city, one of the 6 cities of refuge, it's called.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So,
Where are we going next, Sally?
I love this. Caesarea Philippi.
Ooh.
this is
Very
superb.
interesting site.
Yep.
Caesarea Philippi. Look at that. Who's that?
I don't
Mr.
know.
Roni? It looks like Roni from
No,
behind.
that's not me. I'll move my hands in a different way.
Caesarea Philippi, it's very close to Dan, just a couple miles away. We love going to Caesarea Philippi. It's located some 120 miles north of Jerusalem. It has an amazing archaeological aspect to it because here they had a temple to the god Pan. Pan, you know Pan? The half man, half goat running through the forest playing the low flute. You know the guy we're talking about? So this, and by the way, this is one of the 3 headwaters of the Jordan. We saw Dan. This is the Banyas or Caesarea Philippi. Banyas is the Arabic name, or the
Of the Hellenistic name, Pan.
the
yes.
Hellenistic name from Pan, correct. And so this is also just flowing with water all the time. It's sometimes a lot more, sometimes a little less, but there's always some kind of water flowing. And this spot becomes pretty significant. As I mentioned, it's about 120 miles north of Jerusalem. It's quite a journey even from the Sea of Galilee at 680 feet below sea level to about 11 or almost 1,200 feet above sea level. And Jesus brought the disciples here. And in Matthew chapter 16, Jesus and the disciples are here in Caesarea Philippi. Now look right here. See on the side of the cliff, there's a little alcove. It's a niche carved into the stone where they had false gods. They had the god of Pan, Echo, Hermes, and Zeus. And throughout this whole area behind this tree, you would see the different alcoves in there. And right here, they had a temple built in front of this cave. Now, originally, water came out of the cave under the temple until 1838, is it? About 1838, when a great earthquake caused the cave to cave in, and the water now comes underneath, not out.
Right.
And so what they would do is they would offer sacrifices to the gods of the underworld because they believed that the entrance to this cave was the entrance to the underworld.
Gates of hell.
And they would offer sacrifices until the blood stopped flowing from under the temple. And then they believed that the underworld gods accepted their sacrifice. And here we also have the court of the dancing goats. There was a lot of sexuality, immorality. It was just a place of great debauchery, Caesarea Philippi. And Jesus, and here's one of those alcoves here, for one of the false gods, and here's another one, Pan, Zeus, Hermes, Echo, you see him? And then here's the court of the dancing goats. And this is where Jesus brought the disciples. And in Acts chapter 16, verse 13, he said, "Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" I know who they say these other guys are. There's the temple to Zeus, Pan, Hermes, Echo. But who do they say I am? And of course the disciples answered, well, some say you're John the Baptist, others Elijah or Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And you know what? In 2,000 some odd years, not a lot has changed. Because people today got a pretty wacky and way out ideas about who Jesus is. The Mormons believe he's the spirit brother of Lucifer. The Jehovah's Witnesses believe he's Michael the Archangel. The Church of Christ Science, which is neither a church nor scientific, they think he's simply a good person. The Jews, as well as the Muslims, think he's a prophet. The Hindus believe he's an avatar of God. So a lot of people have a lot of different ideas about who Jesus is. And then Jesus really throws down the gauntlet to the disciples. He says, but who do you say that I am? Wow. Now that's the question that faces all of us. We know what people say about Jesus in general, but who do you say he is? And it was Peter. Remember Peter? Ready, fire, aim, Peter? The guy who only opened his mouth to change feet. You know the guy we're talking about? It was Peter who said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And I could see Jesus saying, oy vey, Peter, was that you? But Peter got one right. He had an epiphany. In fact, Jesus said, flesh and blood hasn't revealed this to you, but my Father which art in heaven. So Peter had a revelation, an epiphany about who Christ is. And the point is simple. Who you believe Jesus Christ is will affect where you will spend all of eternity. Because if you think he's simply a good guy, a prophet, a person, a figure of history, you've missed the mark. Because Jesus is God Almighty in the flesh. In fact, in John chapter 10, verse 30, Jesus said, the Father and I are one. Thomas made that declaration in John chapter 20, verse 28. He said, my Lord and my God. Thomas called him God. In Romans chapter 9, verse 5, he's the eternal God. 1 John 5:20, he's the true God. In Titus 2:13, Paul said, we're looking for the blessed hope and the glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. Even God himself in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 8, said, your throne, O God, is from everlasting to everlasting. So the question that Jesus poses to them is absolutely mind-boggling as it pertains to the location of Caesarea Philippi. But then, if that weren't enough, Jesus said, the gates of hell shall not prevail. Now, as we've mentioned, they believed that this was the entrance to the underworld, or literally the gates to hell. And Jesus said, the gates of hell will not prevail. And I got to tell you, that should bless the socks off all our stinky little feet. Is the enemy real? Are the spiritual battles abounding? You betcha, no question about it. Ephesians 6:16 says, Satan's throwing his fiery darts at us. 1 Peter 5:8 says he's walking about like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. Hey, the battle is real. Ephesians 6:12, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. The battle's real. But the good news is that he who is in you, 1 John 4:4, is greater than he who is in the world. So for you and I, there's going to be victory. 1 Corinthians 15:57 talks about that victory that we have in, through, and because of Christ. So the gates of hell will not prevail. There's no question about that. And then Jesus said something interesting. He said,
Verse 18.
What did he say?
In verse 18, I say to you that you are Peter.
Oh, that.
And on this rock.
Yes.
Oh, am I ahead of you?
No, you're
on
perfect.
This rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it.
So on this rock I'll build my church. Now when you're standing there, go ahead and run it, Sal. When you're standing there, this is a giant rock. You can see to the top of it. It's a giant rock. And people say, oh, this is, no, he's not talking about that rock. He's talking about his church having preeminence over Satan, over the enemy. And that's when Peter, he's a rock, right? But upon this rock I'll build my church. Two words for rock there. One is Petro, small rock. The other is Petra, big rock. So Peter's the small rock. Petra is the big rock, the preeminence that Christ's church will have over the enemy. And all of that is realized right here at Caesarea Philippi. It's an absolutely incredible place, to be sure. Wow.
Yeah, there are seven different pagan churches, pagan temples over there. I see where there are people in pink.
Oh, the temples, yeah.
There are 7 temples, and many times people wonder how come Jesus walked with them for 3.5 days. I mean, he could have gone to Capernaum and said, 5 minutes, I'm going to meet you outside, and have I want to ask you a question. But no, he didn't ask them anything at Capernaum. He took them for 3.5 days of walk uphill, as you heard. And that's when, one day I asked one of the pastors, I said, come on, why? And he said, what do you mean why? Very, very simple why. He wanted to show them who is the real God. You have to pick this, the paganism, or the real God. And that's why he took them to reveal himself so far away from Capernaum. By the way, I want to say one more thing that Pastor Clark said. It was very common in the pagan world to take the firstborn baby and sacrifice him. It was, and like that, you have a sort of a thought that the next babies are going to be spared. They're not going to be harmed. And it was very common. All the Canaanites nation used to sacrifice their firstborn son. When the Jews came to the land, they said, well, it looks good. Maybe we should sacrifice our firstborn son as well. And then they said, wait a second. We tried, and with Abraham, trying to sacrifice Isaac. And God said very clearly, don't you send your hand to the boy. So what Jewish people do, they don't sacrifice the firstborn son. Excuse me. What they do, they purchase the firstborn son from God for a penny. And they call it the purchase of the primus. It's very common. Every Jewish boy that was born at the age of 40 days old, you purchase him from God for a penny. And if you ever wonder, we always talk about the scripture that Jesus was brought to the temple for the dedication. But from the Jewish point of view, the reason why he was brought to the temple is to be purchased from God for a penny instead of sacrificing him.
It was the redemption, price of redemption, to buy him back from God. It was the redemption price.
Yep. So that's that. And Jewish people do it until nowadays. I remember that we did it too when my firstborn was born. Yep.
Yeah.
Even though we're not observing whatever, it's a nice ceremony.
Yeah. Super cool.
It
Luke
was,
chapter
it was
2.
Cheap. It was only a penny. So
In Luke chapter 2. Okay, where are we going next, Sally?
Jordan River?
Yeah.
The Jordan, going down, Jordan.
Now, this is the place that, in this part of the Jordan River, you can do whitewater rafting. They call it the wild. It's not the Colorado area or whatever, but still you can do whitewater. You put a helmet, and the current is very strong, and it goes downhill. When it comes to the Sea of Galilee, it's really it's not a big river. It's a little disappointing, as I told you before. But it's from the theological point of view, it means a lot. Yeah.
And sometimes it's higher than other times, depending on the season and the rainfall and the snow melting and whatnot. Yeah. Sometimes it's really full, sometimes it's not.
Yeah, when you showed the second site, the Caesarea Philippi, we came up to we never knew how come the water is so high in the winter and there's nothing in the summer. And then someone said, maybe it's the melting snow from Mount Hermon, And about 10 years ago, we painted the slope of the hill with blue. We put like food coloring, and we painted the slope of the hill, the snow, we painted it blue. And a few weeks later, blue water came out. So now we know that the main source of Caesarea Philippi is from the melting snow of Mount Hermon. Yeah. So that's it. That's why sometimes we have a lot of water, sometimes in the summer there is nothing, no snow melting. Yeah.
But it's a lot like Temecula. If you look on a globe, we're almost on the same latitude as Israel. So the countryside, the way it looks, the foliage,
the
vegetation, it's very similar. It's brown and dry in the summertime. It's green and lush in the wintertime, just like Temecula. So it's really interesting. In fact, the first couple of times we went, we got so excited. We're out driving. We're thinking, we could have got this in Temecula. I mean, everything was identical. But then, of course, we started visiting the biblical sites, and our hearts melted, and we're like, okay, this is what life's all about.
Yep,
here's the baptismal.
Now, this is the baptismal. This is Yardenet. It's called Yardenet. This is a baptismal site that we go to. It's the Jordan River. And interestingly enough, it might show more of it, but it's a big facility. there's several of these. Like there's one here, there's one here, there's one up here. It goes around. You can see them here. And Pastor Chuck Smith was very instrumental in getting this built.
Yep.
Calvary Costa Mesa provided a lot of the funding for it. And there's buildings with showers and gift stores and really just places to eat and whatnot. It's really a great, great place where we go to do water baptism right there in the Jordan. It's at the southern end of the Sea of Galilee, just right outside the Sea of Galilee on the southern end.
I was hoping to find the Bethabara
And
baptismal.
we'll probably talk about Bethabara when we get down to the Dead Sea. But I'll never forget, when we were here once with Pastor Chuck, on one of our trips with Chuck, it was amazing. I think 8 or 9 buses, we filled up the entire baptismal site.
They closed it for us.
They closed the whole site for us. And Pastor Chuck is down in the water, and 2 or 3 people were on the shore, playing guitars, and 500 people were singing. There wasn't a dry eye in the place, let me put it that way. I mean, God's Spirit was moving, and it was just overwhelming. And Sally and I, we make our way down to the baptismal, to the water. Chuck baptized me at Calvary, down at Corona del Mar at the Pirates Cove many, many years ago. But I wanted to get baptized in the Jordan. So Sally and I we're just crying and praying. And we get down in the water, and Pastor Chuck grabs me, and it was so amazing. And he puts us under the water. And when we came up out of the water,
You're not getting dinner tonight.
How long it kept you down there?
when we came up out of the water, Sally let out a blood-curdling scream that was so loud.
It was cold.
It was ice cold. I mean, the music stopped. 500 people stopped singing. Like, what happened to her? And then all of a sudden, she's going, it's cold. And everybody laughed. They start singing again. But I'll never forget that. It was so funny.
Yeah, it was embarrassing. Okay.
Okay, bologna for dinner. Fair enough.
Moving along. Okay.
So
you
that's
ready
the
to go?
baptismal site.
Okay.
Where are we going now, honey?
Mount Bental with Shalom Almog.
Pause it right there for 1 second. Boom. Mount Bental. This is Colonel Shalom Almog. Remember at the beginning? He shares his testimony here on Mount Bental. He was a company commander. Was it in 67?
Yep.
In the Six-Day War in 1967, he was a company commander here on Mount Bental. Right out here in the distance is Damascus. So it's right at the top of the Golan Heights. It's a big hill, and Israelis owned that territory. And during the Six-Day War, he was a commander here, and he lost several of his troops at a battle here. So he shares an incredible story, and
It was pretty touching.
it's just an incredible time up here on Mount Bental. Of course, you've got the road that leads out to Damascus. Mm-hmm. You've got Damascus in the background, and what's the city?
Qunetra.
There's 2 Quenetras. There's an old one here, and that's the one he fought against, and a new Qunetra, I think, is maybe it's that one.
That's
yeah.
it.
So they left this one in ruins because during the Six-Day War, this was the battle, right from Mount Bental to Qunetra. So this is Mount, okay, go ahead and run it. So this is Mount Bental.
It's a clear day that day. You could really see far.
Clear day, you can see out to Damascus oftentimes.
Yeah, you can.
And there's a coffee shop there.
And a bathroom.
And it's called Coffee
Qumran.
Annan.
Yeah. By the way,
Coffee in the Clouds.
Now, during the revolt, there was a revolt in Syria. And I was with a group standing on Mount Bental, and the rebels were in a little Qunetra between the trees I'm pointing out over here, and the Syrian army was over here, and they were shelling. And I was standing over there. I said, "Wow, isn't it amazing?" And they would say, what amazing? Let's get out of here. What do you mean amazing, amazing? But you could really stand over there and see the whole battle, okay? And by the way, right to the right, this is Mount Bental, and next to it is another hill by the name of Avital. The Israeli army took all the hills so they can control Syria. This is already Syria. All of it is Syria, and right over here, the Israeli army has an intelligence camp, with all the domes and so on. And I was there with a group of NRA, and they were pointing at the intelligence hill and asking me, Roni, what's that?
There it is.
So I told them, it's a weather station. I said, come on, Roni, you promised to tell the truth, which I never do, by the way. And I said, this is the truth. It tells us whether the Syrians are coming or not. and then I said, stop the nonsense. I mean, come on, try to be serious once. But you can see this used to be an Israeli post, and the army left, and that's when they turned it into a sort of a tourist place. We go there not for the restaurant. We go there because of the view, because we can see all the way to Damascus, and you can see the road to Damascus, and that's what makes it so powerful.
Yeah, from Acts chapter 9, remember Paul on the road to Damascus?
Yeah.
Right there. Right there.
Exactly, and how can you tell what is Israel? Usually, if you wonder, every place where you see no vegetation, no fields, is Syria. Every place where you see fields and so on, this is Israel. And that's why we call it the green line. I mean, green was, and then bare.
You can see the bunkers.
Yeah, and if you go a little bit more to, it doesn't go to the right, but a little more to the right, it's going to be the same hill of the intelligence.
Yeah.
So the army left. The army left and left it to us, and we love to come here. And,
we've been up there in the snow. It snows up there.
Yeah, that's a place that after about 7 minutes, my lips are frozen and I don't say a word.
Yeah, we've been up there several times, and that's why we always say when we go to Israel, bring a beanie and a jacket and gloves.
Just for here.
What? It's for here, because it was snowing a few times when we were up there. It was beautiful.
Look, you see, this is Mount Hermon.
Oh
with
yeah.
all the snow. Okay, there's a big debate in the church where is the Mount of Transfiguration. From Matthew 17. Some people say it's Mount Tabor. Some people say it's Mount Hermon. Because if we go with the chronological event, so after Jesus went with the disciple to Caesarea Philippi, he went for the Transfiguration, and it's right next to each other. So many people, like I have this picture.
We're praying for shalom.
Yeah, praying for shalom.
Yeah. He's a good guy. I love that guy.
Yeah, here he is.
He had some heart problems.
He had everything. He had
everything.
Everything. Heart, kidneys,
Keep him in your
cancer.
prayers.
Yeah, he's a very sweet man. We love him.
Sweet as can be.
Yeah. It's very, yeah, here he is. All the area over there is surrounded by mines. We didn't move them. The Syrian planted a lot of mines, and we came to them and we asked them, can you give us the map? And they said, no, we don't have one. So we just put barbed wire and fences, and we said, if one day we're going to give back the Golan to the Syrian, we're just going to move the fences and the barbed wire. Then we're going to find out if they have a map or not.
Picnic area.
So, by the way, in next month is going to be the time of cherry here in the U.S., right? Cherry, April.
Cherry trees.
What? Yeah.
Cherry trees. Yeah.
And this is the center of cherry in Israel. All the cherry in Israel is coming from the Golan. So that's really a great place.
Speaking of Mount Bental and the military in Syria and Lebanon, can you give us a brief update since October 7th with the attack on Israel and what's going on and the heart in Israel and the atmosphere in Israel with the people and what's going on real briefly? Can you do that?
Yeah. How long we have? 2 hours? I'll do it very quickly. On October 7th at 6 o'clock in the morning, the siren went off. It's very loud where I live. It's right by me, and we jump out, and we in every house in Israel we have what they call a a security room. You know, it's a room that had very thick concrete walls that if a rocket is coming, it won't harm us. And we jumped into the room and we took the little dog with us. And then we found out that on that very same minute, they launched close to 10,000 rockets to Israel, which was huge. I mean, within a few minutes. I mean, 3,000, 3,000, 3,000. And it was a day, it's a holiday in Israel. Things looked very peaceful, so the army sent most of the soldiers home for the weekend. And there was no warning that anything is going to happen. And after shelling a big part of Israel, between 3,000 and 4,000 Hamas terrorists were able to cross into Israel. You know, the biggest attack that we had from the Hamas were 3, 4 people, 5 people trying to enter Israel. This time we had between 3,000 and 4,000 people entering Israel. Israel built a fence which was very sophisticated, but they did something that fooled us. For weeks they were training next to the fence, and they were practicing maneuvering forces, but they always went back to their bases. But on that very same morning, at 6:15 in the morning, 3,000 Hamas terrorists crossed the border. They took the D9 and they were able to move away the fence. Some of them came with those, how do you call this?
The gliders.
Gliders. And they landed in the middle of the kibbutzim. Everybody was sleeping. And they started to attack the people at homes. And another unit, there was a big music festival not far away from the border. They surrounded it and they decided to kill everybody who was there. So they killed 400 kids at the party. And then they went into the kibbutzim and they started to break into the security rooms, raping the women, killing men, killing the whole families. In few cases, pregnant women, they cut and they took the baby, the premature baby, and they put it in the microwave and they turned the microwave on. They did things that we never thought could happen. And to our amazement, the army didn't come. There was no army. There was no air force, nothing. And it took the Israelis a few hours to recoup, just to send some forces in order to take them out of there, but it was too late. They murdered most of the kibbutzim members along the border. You know, every kibbutz has a small unit of 6, 7, 8, people that they have weapons in case something happens, and 3, 4, 5 terrorists are going to come. So they're going to face them until the army is going to come and support them. But those 5, 6, 7 people couldn't stand in front of 2,000, 3,000. And on top of that, the second that the fence was broken, the people from Gaza, they started to walk. You know, it's about a mile. They crossed it and they went to, and they started looting and killing too. So this was the event of October 7th. And it took us a while to figure out what goes on. We found out they had almost 200 and plus hostages. Israelis were always afraid, what happened if one soldier is going to be captured? And suddenly we have dozens of soldiers they captured women, they captured old people, babies, 10-month-old babies, and they took them to Gaza. Over 200 people are being hostages, and we said, what are we going to do? And Israel saw it as a war declaration. It's the hardest event ever that took us by surprise. We lost 1,400 people on that very same day. And Israel decided to get the forces, and a war broke out. For the first few days, it was only air raids by the Air Force. And then we decided to send troops into Gaza, which some of them are still there. Most of them are out, by the way. And that's it. The situation is that Israel took over a big part of Gaza. We found out that we always thought there's a battle in the air, in the sea, and on the ground. And we didn't understand there's a fourth dimension, which is tunnels. And they have tunnels in the last 20 years. The Hamas organization built tunnels underground. We're talking about almost 400 miles of tunnels, 600 kilometers. And they used billions of dollars when the people were starving, no education, nothing. Most of the money that they received from Europe and the US and UN and so on went to build tunnels and arms and military. And what we are doing now, most of the war is just to find those tunnels and to blow them up. We are very careful because in some of the tunnels are going to be our hostages. In the meantime, we found out that most of the women were raped. Now, the women, the soldier women which are there, and every day they come up with another message that more and more people that were alive were murdered while they were there. And Israel is facing now that a situation that the Biden administration, that was very supportive at the beginning, wants us to stop. And if we're going to stop, we'll never get the hostages back. Mm-hmm. And from the other hand, we do understand what goes on in Gaza. I mean, not all the Gaza people are Hamas, and they suffer as well. And we are trying to get as much trucks and food and supply to Gaza. And right now we are told Hamas that we are not going to go into a ceasefire unless we're going to get our people back, because we want them there. They've been there for 4 months in a tunnel, and that's how things are. Yesterday when we met, and Pastor Clark asked me, "How do you feel?" I told him, for the first time, we have sadness in our heart. I'm sad for the people that are there. I'm sad about the situation. I'm upset about the government that they didn't pay attention to the warnings. I'm a little surprised about the army. We have an intelligence that if a terrorist is hiding in a building in Beirut, we can send a drone and we can hit the terrorist on the 7th floor in his bedroom without hitting the other floors. That's how good is our intelligence. And here, the Israeli intelligence, which we were so proud of it, they didn't see nobody saw anything. Nobody saw the preparation. Nobody figured out all the signs. And these are the answers that we have to answer to ourselves. But the main figure in Israel is the sadness that we have in our heart. We are very united as people in Israel. You can see, I don't know if you know, but I'm walking with a little, I call it necklace, that has bring them home. As Israelis, and we want to bring, Israelis don't want anybody to get killed in Gaza, but on the other hand, we want them to come back home. And that's why the Israelis are fighting there. I think if they are going to bring them back, the war is going to be ended tomorrow. But right now, nobody wants to give them back. We don't even have names. We don't even know who is alive, and we don't know who is where. That's the worst situation. And we were able to release a few of them by attacking some places, but most of them are still in the Hamas hands, and they know how vulnerable we are when it comes to hostages, so that's why the battle is still on. So if you see pictures from Gaza, yes, we hit Gaza badly. I don't think, if they would have known how Israel is going to react, I don't think they would have started, but with no doubts, it's the hardest hit that we as Israeli got hit by any organization, by any Arab nation. We were fighting, terrible wars like Yom Kippur War and so on, but this is a situation that we never faced and we didn't know how to react. So right now Israelis are in a stage of, okay, we're willing to lose up a little bit, but we want them back, and I hope things are going to be much better in the future. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, but I was asked. No, thank you.
We support you and Israel 100%. Always have, always will. And we'll keep praying for God's hand to continue to bless Israel. Because you, not just Gaza, but now you got Hezbollah with Lebanon in the north. Yeah, that's sponsored through Iran, probably. But
we sometimes Israel feel like a shield. Like a shield. Iran is not only in Israel. Iran is all over. Iran is in Yemen with the Houthis, and Iran is all over. Every terror act that you have in Europe in the last few years, every big terror act was involved with Iran. Mm-hmm. Iran. We are not concerned about Iran. We are not concerned about Iran but we are concerned about the fact that Iran is maneuvering forces all around us, whether it's going to be in Jordan, whether it's going to be in Syria, whether it's going to be in Baghdad. Iran is very strongly in Yemen, And we know what we do. I mean, we attack them, and with that, when I showed you the Air Force over there, we attack the Iranian every night in Syria, every day in Syria. But Lebanon has an organization by the name of Hezbollah, started as a small terror organization, and with the support of Iran and the weapon that they are smuggling into Lebanon, turned the Hezbollah into a very powerful source. They have about 25,000 soldiers. Right now, today, according to Israeli intelligence, there are about 130,000 rockets facing Israel from Lebanon. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we know, but we also know what we are able to. Matter of fact, we can really turn Beirut into dust, and so they know we will. So that's what is holding them from attacking. Right now, the idea was that the Hamas is going to attack in the south, and the Hezbollah is going to attack in the north, but they were hesitating whether they should or not because they were afraid from Israeli reaction, so they didn't. What they do, they give us a little daily battle, you know, in the north. Every day they aim and they shoot few cities. More damage to property, not so much to people, but it's annoying. It's annoying battle, and if you'll ask for, everybody in Israel knows that the second that the battle in Gaza is going to calm down a little bit, most likely there's going to be a war between Israel and Hezbollah, which is going to be short but very powerful and very painful for us. For the first time, we know that we ask to keep water in the houses to make sure that we have enough water supply, to buy generators in case we get hit by the electric company. So we know it's going to be unpleasant, but I think it's going to happen. And when Pastor Clark said, I'm not coming, and I knew right away that he understands the picture, that maybe Hamas is not an issue, but the Hezbollah in Lebanon will be.
I wasn't concerned about Gaza at all because we're very close to it when we're down at Bet Givrim and different places like that. But when they closed Caesarea Philippi and Dan in the north and the Golan, those are sites we don't want to miss. So that's one reason why we really stood back and canceled the trip.
Plus all the villages and all the cities up north in the northern part of Israel, they evacuated the people and they moved them to hotels around the Sea of Galilee, so we have no hotels.
The place we usually eat lunch, Kiryat Shmona, is that how you say that?
In the Druze village up there on the hill.
That
too, but in Kiryat Shmona, they got hit, right?
That everybody. Yeah. I mean, the city is closed. 40,000 people have been moved out of their homes. We have, it's very funny, we have today close to 250,000 refugees in our own country. I mean, the people that came from the south, they were moved from the border because the kibbutz was completely destroyed and all their homes were set on fire. And the people up north, they moved them away to prevent what happened to the people along the border in Gaza. Yeah. So this is the situation that in a very small country, we have refugees in our own country. But we can deal with it. I mean, we know it's temporary. It's not going to be forever. Yeah. But
well, you know, one problem we see here is the United Nations and unfortunately the United States. They always put so much pressure on Israel, like, oh, stop, ceasefire, rather than saying, look, turn them loose, let them take care of business, and get the bad guys out of the scene, and let life carry on. But unfortunately, you guys got a lot of pressure from Europe, from the United Nations, even from the United States, unfortunately.
Yeah, you know, we always try to, when you talk numbers, we always try to put it in the right proportion. For us, 1,400 people is like, for you, 60,000 people. So I wonder how the Americans are going to react if suddenly someone is going to murder 60,000 people, if they're going to see it nicely. I remember that they ran after one man for 10 years all over Afghanistan in order to find bin Laden. So we're running after the guy who planned that attack. He's the head of the Hamas, and that's it.
Well, when we are on Mount Bental, Shalom and Roni usually give us a briefing on the military and what's going on in Israel. So this is typically what we get up on Mount Bental when we're up there. Yep. From Roni and Shalom, who's full bird colonel, you know, in the Israeli, and he still has a lot of connections. So, okay, where are we at now?
In Harad. Gideon's spring.
In Harod. We left the northern part of Israel. We got in our bus. We're traveling down the Jordan Valley south toward the Dead Sea. And we take a little stop in Harod, or the spring of Herod. We call it Gideon's spring because of Judges chapter 6 and 7. Now you remember at the death of Aaron in 1400 BC, and between the anointing of Saul in 1050 BC, we have a period of time, about a 350-year period of time, called the period of the judges, when God raised up 12, maybe 13 judges, depending on which judge you think is or isn't a judge. But this particular judge is Gideon. He would be the 6th judge in Israel. And the theme of the book of Judges, pretty simple. Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And God would send their enemies to rule over them. And over a period of time, the children of Israel would recognize that, and they would cry out to God for deliverance. God would send a judge to deliver them from the hands of their enemies. They would be doing great for a long period of time, and pretty soon, once again, they would fall back into doing that which is evil in the sight of God. God would deliver them to their enemies. Eventually, they'd come to their senses, cry out to God. God would send another judge. Well, that's the story of the book of Judges in a nutshell. One judge, of course, is Gideon. Now, there's so many things we can talk about with Gideon, with the water. There's a water source up here. Is this thing going?
Yeah, I was going to let you do that because of the valley. You could see the valley for the battle, but we'll go back to
Ronnie will talk about the battle and all that goes on there, too.
9 seconds.
But here, Gideon, of course, now today they've turned it into a great little place and people swim and whatnot. Remember when it was very rustic? There wasn't any of that. It's turned into a beautiful national park now. We used to have to walk up some gravel things back up behind all these trees and shrubs, and we'd finally get to the mouth of the cave where the water was coming out. And that, of course, is where we can talk about Gideon drinking the water and, keeping an eye out. And, he put out the fleece twice, and God pared down his army from 32,000 to 22,000, all the way down to 300, was it?
Yep.
So many things we can talk about. But one thing that really blessed me about the story of Gideon is his humility. Because God came to Gideon. He said, "Mighty man of valor." Gideon, me? In Judges chapter 6, verse 15, he said, "My clan is the least of Israel, and I'm the least of my clan." In other words, God, I'm nothing. Who am I that you're going to use me to deliver the children of Israel from the Midianites? And just that one simple little point about Gideon really blessed my heart. Because God chose somebody to do a great work, and he recognized that he wasn't equipped for it, that he really wasn't the man for the job. But God chose to use him in a powerful way. And I guess I like that story because we got nothing. And yet God wants to use us. God wants to come alongside of us to battle the enemy, we might say. And I think for each and every one of us, it's important we not get prideful when that happens, but we recognize in humility and say, God, like Gideon, I got nothing. And I believe that's when God says, I know. But I want to give you what you need. And of course, you know the story. There was a great victory, and God just did a great and mighty work through Gideon. Now, as we're here, you can see the valley here, and there's some incredible things that happened here with was it Wingate?
Wingate, yeah. The little place over here, this is the place where Gideon took the people to drink the water, gave them a few options. The one that kept their weapon in one hand and drank with the other, they were the one that picked up to be his army. And the story is that, in 1941, the British were in Israel. They came in 1917, they left in 1948. And in 1941, there was a big pipe that ran fuel all the way from Iraq to Haifa. They call it TAP line, Trans-Arab Petroleum. And the British were afraid that the Arabs will blow up that pipe. So there was an army unit that were patrolling along the pipe to protect the pipe from any explosion, whatever. And the head of the unit, his name was Charles Ort Wingate. He was a lieutenant in the British Army. In what we call today, in our way, we're going to call it the born again, okay, saved. And he was very happy with his new way of life, and he took the Bible, and he went to sit right by the water, and to read from the book of Judges, chapter 5, 6, 7, or 6, 7, 8. And you know how important is the judge according to how many chapters are dedicated to him. For example, Samson, 3 chapters. Gideon, 3 chapters. There's a guy, his name is Shamgar, 1 verse. So everybody has his own. And this Charles Ort Wingate is sitting by the water, open the Bible and reading about Gideon. And he thought he was getting crazy. I said, I can't believe it. I'm sitting right in the place where Gideon picked up his night warriors, his night commando. And his eyes were filled with tears, and he said, I can't believe I'm here. And right next to that, right over there, there's a little school, they call it Kaduri. Kaduri is a school which in the 1940s, if someone wanted to give a good education to his son, he would have sent him to become a good farmer. It was a school that taught you how to become a good farmer. And this officer in the British Army, Charles Ort Wingate, is coming to the school, and some kids are playing basketball over there, and said, "Excuse me, can I ask you a question?" And the guy, is dribbling. He said, "Yes." Said, "You guys are from around here?" And they said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you know what happened here?" And I said, "What?" And keep on, dribbling. Said, "This is where Gideon picked up his night warriors." And so I said, "Do you understand? It's right over here." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Listen," he said, "My name is Charles. I'm an officer over here. And right now we are fighting our war against the Nazis. But I want you to know," said Charles Ort Wingate, when we are done with our war, you're going to face a war too. You're a small nation surrounded by 25 million Muslims, and you have no army. Let me train you." And he spoke to a guy that his name was Yitzhak Rabin, and next to him there was another guy by the name of Ariel Sharon. There was a guy who was a little older, he was just listening to it from the side, his name was Moshe Dayan. And he took those kids and he started to train them how to use the night for their advantage, how to go as a small unit and attack a big camp, how to walk when the wind is with you and not against you, how to walk without walking on dry weed so you're going to be heard. And as a matter of fact, what Charles Ort Wingate, he established the Israeli army. He is a Gentile who decided that he's going to establish the Israeli army, the first troops that we call him Palmach later on. And it's amazing that the whole Israeli army started in one point, right over there, where Pastor Clark is standing and teaching in what we call Gideon Springs. Yeah, that's where Sally is teaching.
Charles Wingate, amazing.
Charles Ort Wingate, a Gentile who established the Israeli army here at Gideon Springs.
Because remember Gideon, with his 300 men, had the torches with the clay pots over it at nighttime. They pulled and it seemed like there was thousands of troops. And so they attack at night. It was a night warrior. Very incredible. And it all happened right there.
Right over here.
Amazing.
Okay.
Yep.
Where are we going now, Sally?
We're going to drive over to Beit She'an.
Oh,
I love Beit She'an.
Amazing site.
We talked about this earlier, Beit She'an or Scythopolis. It's one of the Decapolis, one of the 10 cities, the only Decapolis city on the west side of the Jordan.
Right.
Yeah. This is an amazing archaeological find. Many, many, many years ago when we were there wasn't too much. I mean, there was a lot, but not too much. But now it is an expansive dig. It is incredible. Tell us about it, Roni.
Usually when I tell people that I like Beit She'an, it's a complete a Roman city, Hellenistic Roman city, that if I need in Rome, I need about 2-3 days in order to show you a few sites. Over there, within an hour, I can show you what I show you in Rome in a day or two. It's a city that was built by a bunch of veterans from the army of Alexander the Great. Okay, they are the same people that built Caesarea Philippi. They call it Panias. They got pen, and they built here a city, and they call it Scythopolis. You know, when people came here from the old country, let's say if they came from England to the U.S. and they came from the city of York, so they called the city New York, or if they came from Jersey, it was New Jersey, and they kept the name from the past. Over here, the people came from South Turkey. They were Scyts, veterans, and they called it Scythopolis, and they built a complete Roman Hellenistic city with the biggest theater that we found in the country that seats 10,000 people. You know, when it comes to archaeology, the first question that people ask me, how many people lived here? So usually I make up a number and nobody knows, so it's okay. but no, seriously. But we have a very good way of telling how many people live in the city, and this is by the theater. There's a formula that says, if I have a theater that has 10,000 seats in the theater, I multiply it by 10. That's how many people live in the city. So 10,000 people sitting in the theater, it means 100,000 people live in the city. Caesarea, that we saw at the beginning, is 4,000 seats, so it means 40,000 people live in the city. For me, it's almost an accurate way of telling how many people live in the city. The city has up a hill. You know, when people started to live over there, they lived on a tell, remember? Because it was safe to be up there. But then the Hellenistic world invented an arch, and on top of the arch they can run pipes, what they call aqueduct, and now you can spread the city. And the top of the hill is going to be the place where you pray, and you have a temple. And the bottom of the hill, what you call the police, the city, the police with an S, is going to be on the bottom of the hill, and the Acropolis, the upper hill, is going to be where you pray. And this is going to be a complete Roman city with cardo and with bathhouses and with everything. And we walk here, we can really see how people took seriously their downtown. They built the whole city from beautiful limestone, so the city was completely white, even though all the stones are going to be black around it. And the city is a city that when you walk through, you have a feeling that you walk in Rome or in any Roman city 2,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, when I take people, I can even show them the Cardo. Cardo is a road that is cutting the city in half, okay? Like Fifth Avenue, okay, city. And there's another city called the Comanos, so it's like 42nd Street, okay? So we have Fifth Avenue and 42nd Street. And in the Cardo, we can see even there are two lanes. One goes this way, the other one goes this way. By the way, you know which way you are driving or walking or 2,000 years ago? Are you going on the left lane or on the right lane? I'm going to have two different answers here, I know. But usually in the past, they used to go on the left lane. They used to go on the left lane, mainly because when you get on a horse, usually when you get on a horse, you go like that, from the left, and then you stay on the lane and you go, and the other side is where the other horses are going, and you go on the left lane. I mean, because that's the way you get on a horse. And the other reason why you're on the left lane is because if you see someone from far away, you can raise your hand, say, hey, hello, how are you? And show you that you don't have a weapon in your hand. And by not having, and then when you come down, you're getting closer and you're going to lower your hand, and then you're going to shake hands like that. You're shaking hands like that. If there's any weapon here, it's going to fly out, okay? I mean, sometimes people think this is shaking hand. No, this is shaking hand, okay? and the whole idea is in order to prevent being surprised by a weapon, okay? So that's very clearly. So this is how I think. I mean, the whole idea of not killing each other. From the same idea when you drink wine, you say cheers and you knock the glasses, just to make sure that in the past they used to poison each other. So they used to fill up the glass all the way to the top, and like that, when you say cheers, one goes from one glass to another, and now you're safe. Nobody's going to poison you. Yes. So this is the handshake, like that, to make sure that there's no weapon, and we can see it very clearly when we are walking. And everything that we see over there, we can see how people used to gamble. We found a room that they used to gamble because we found a room with the goddess Ticha, right over here, with the goddess Ticha. She was the goddess of wealth and gambling. I mean, no Roman is going to gamble without having the goddess Tichar next to him. And it's we find a room over there next to the goddess Tichar that the inscription in red said, "Hey, psst, come in. I'll give you some good time." No, it's not Mother Teresa. It's a prostitute that sits over there, and she's inviting the people to come and have some good time. And like when you go to Amsterdam and you have the red light zone, that the prostitute sitting in the window, over there most likely she was sitting, and if someone was tempted, they would go up to the second floor, and it was very common in the corrupted Hellenistic world. So this is a complete Roman city. We've even found complete toilet. That you sit over there, and of course there's no flushing toilet, but there's water running under you that takes everything, flushes it all the time. A complete Roman city, and this is the theater, which is the biggest theater in the world. And we don't use it as Caesarea for night shows and so on, but we use it as well.
And you can see the clay pipes. Some of the clay pipes have been excavated. There was natural springs that ran 24/7. So the whole city had running water through the whole city, through every room, every building, and that's why everything got washed out down to the River Jordan, out into the valley. So they had fresh, clean, running spring water 24/7. Nothing stayed. There was no disease, if you will. Everything was clean and washed out with fresh water 24/7 in every house, every building, every shop.
And there are many things that, we live today in the 21st century, and they say, wow, great, we have water and we have faucet. We found that in Beit She'an, in Scopus, they have faucet the same way that we do. I mean, today when you raise the little, lever, and what happens if there's a pipe, and when you raise the lever, it goes and water can go. You don't need the water, you raise it down. We found the same thing 2,000 years ago, that there was a faucet, and people used to push down a sort of a piece of stone, and this was a lever from 2,000 years ago. So when we walk through Beit She'an, I can show you the plumbing now is identical to the plumbing from 2,000 years ago. And of course, we can show you one of the most beautiful theaters that we have, I think, in the whole Middle East. So
a lot of it's remodeled. You can see the old, and then you can see some of the new, where they've reconstructed it so you can see what it looks like. Some of the newer stones, and then of course you see some old stones. So there's a lot of replicas to show you what it was like originally. It's an amazing archaeological find. The street, remember he said the Cardo? That's the main street, the Cardo, right? From the heart, cardiologist. That's the heart of the city, the Cardo. And the street is sloped a little bit, so water runs to each side.
Here's the Cardo. This is the Cardo.
See how the street.
This is the street, and this is the sidewalk.
That's the sidewalk. Now, but in the street, the pavers to make the street aren't square. They're turned like a chevron, sideways at a 45-degree angle. So when the wagon wheels traveled, they didn't clip-clop. They were quiet as they rolled across down the street. It's just the engineering is amazing. Right down the middle of the street, there's a sewer that runs in the middle that takes everything out to the valley below, and ultimately out to the Jordan Valley, which is very close by. And you can see the effects of the earthquake. See all the columns falling down?
The one thing, you know what archaeologists really love? Disasters. We love disasters. I mean, Pompeii, what a great disaster. I mean, from the archaeological point of view, and over here there was a great disaster as well. There was an earthquake in 479. There was an earthquake. They destroyed the whole city. By the way, I have to say one thing that, there's a prophecy in Matthew 11 that talks about the destruction of, Jesus is getting really upset about some cities that didn't follow him. So in Matthew 11, it says, woe Chorazin, woe Bethsaida, woe Capernaum, you're going to be destroyed because you didn't follow me, and whatever. It's a terrible prophecy of complete destruction. Mm-hmm. By the way, in my Hebrew Bible, it doesn't say woe Chorazin, it says oi. Oi Chorazin, it's a very oi, like oi, terrible thing. And so people ask me, so was the prophecy fulfilled? And I say, of course, because all the three cities were destroyed in the same minute. In the same minute. by a terrible earthquake and 749. And so people can say, okay, Roni, come on, destruction by earthquake? I mean, everything was destroyed. So where's the prophecy here? So yes, in 749, when there was by the way, another one in 363, but the one that was really bad was 749, and 21 cities were completely destroyed by the earthquake, completely destroyed. 18 cities were rebuilt and turned to be normal again. 3 cities were never rebuilt. You know which one? Masada, Chorazim, and Capernaum. The same 3 cities that Jesus had a prophecy they were going to be destroyed. And this is the same earthquake that is going to hit Beit She'an and completely destroy it. And matter of fact, after that, they built it a little bit, but it never came to be a big city until we built a city next to it by the name of Beit She'an. Yeah, that's it. It's amazing walkthrough.
Now you can see right here, you can see some Egyptian hieroglyphics, if you will, because keep rolling. Because the Tel, the raised area up on top here, you can see armies coming all the way from Syria, all the way to the south, and then down to the west, the northwest. See how high it is? So this was a very important military location as well, because you can see what's going on. So this, of course, was occupied by different people throughout the centuries. However, Beit She'an is mentioned in the Bible. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, Saul, remember the prophet Saul? Or Samuel, rather? Samuel, the prophet, told King Saul to utterly destroy the Amalekites in 1 Samuel chapter 15. Utterly destroy the Amalekites. Saul was disobedient. He kept King Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive. And subsequently, when you get to 2 Samuel, in 2 Samuel chapter 1, verses 1 through 10, it was an Amalekite that killed Saul. Now, Saul ran himself through. He tried to commit suicide, but he didn't die. We're told very clearly in 2 Samuel 1 through 10, that an Amalekite, apparently a descendant of Amalek, the king of the Amalekites, had this is the bathroom. Everybody's sitting on the bathroom here. These are the public, and water runs underneath here, and it waters this is like a big pool of water, so water's everywhere in this city.
Yes, we become very close on our trips to Israel.
Yes.
Go ahead with Amalek. Go ahead.
So an Amalekite had subsequently killed Saul, and it was Saul's headless body that hung on the walls of Beit She'an, the Bible says. So this is where it happened. And I guess the point's pretty simple. If we don't destroy the flesh is going to come back to destroy us. Okay.
Can I say one more
Yes.
thing?
Okay.
I just want to say one more thing when it comes. You see, hold it you see the Tel? During the time of Saul, the city of Beit She'an is up there. This is it. Everything that you see in the bottom was built only around 2600 BC, by the Hellenistic, let's say by the people who were veterans. But I have to say that when it comes to archaeology, we wanted, we have many layers of going through, and about 25 years ago, an Israeli scientist in Weizmann Institute invented a little tiny pill. I don't know if you know that instead of going through a telescope here, you just swallow the pill. The pill has a camera, and while you swallow the pill goes through your digesting system, and and you don't have to go through any process. It tells you right away what goes on. You can stop the pill, you can move it to the right, to the left, you can take it back a little bit. Really, a little camera that goes through your body. And we came to the guy who invented that pill, and we asked him, can you do something that we can use in archaeology? I said, sure. And instead of going through the whole process of digging through, we drilled a hole in the Tel, and we put a camera inside that we could control it going to the right, and we found the level for the time of the city of Beit She'an from the time of Saul. And then we decided, yes, to go to that level, and we found the wall of the city of Beit She'an, that on that wall they hung, of course, Saul and his sons, naked and headless. And then we found out something amazing. We found out that the whole level from the time of Saul is Philistines. And we said, how can it be? The Philistines are completely on that. If Beit She'an is on the east of Israel, the Philistines are going to be in the west, in the south part of Israel, south of Tel Aviv. And how come the Philistines are over here? It didn't make any sense. And just because of the little tiny camera that we were able to smuggle in, we started to ask questions. And because we found that the whole level was Philistines, we said, that doesn't make any sense. It cannot be. And then we found out 2 buildings that there used to be Egyptian administration building. And we found out that elementary. It was so simple. We found out that when the Philistines came to the land, they came from the Greek islands, they landed on the shore of Tel Aviv, and they made their way down to Egypt along the what they call the Via Maris, the highway. And the Egyptian said, you must be kidding, right? So the Egyptian army went up, and after a short battle, they won the battle, and they settled the Philistines in 5 cities along the shore, south of Tel Aviv, which, by the way, that caused the tribe Dan to leave. And then suddenly, the Egyptian came to the Philistines and said, you guys gave us a great fight. Matter of fact, you were a superb army. You fought with us in a beautiful way. Why don't you Philistines be watching the north of Israel from the top of the hill that you can see all the way to the north on our behalf? Why don't you become the first ever foreign legion? And the Philistines said, sure, why not? We love to. And now the Philistines are leaving the 5 cities. They send a big army to sit on the top of the hill. And while they're sitting on the top of the hill, and now they are the bodies of the Egyptian, they gave themselves the permission to hustle the Israeli tribes. And that's why the battle between Saul and the Philistines is going to take place right over here, which doesn't make any sense, because nobody in the biblical scholars could figure out why is the battle next to Beit She'an if the Philistines are all the way down in Tel Aviv. One little tiny camera gave us the answer, because now we found out that over there, the Philistines are the first ever foreign legion sitting on behalf of the Egyptians, and that's why they pulled Saul and his army to fight right over there by the Gilboa, by Beit She'an, and that's where he died, and that's where they hung the body right over here.
Amazing.
So sometimes archaeologists coming with a very unusual way to get some answer that we had no answer for that for years.
That's right. Super good.
Did I make myself clear?
Oh, yeah. Now, we don't see it. See, there's a tree up here.
Yeah.
Now, Jesus Christ Superstar, remember that movie?
Yeah. Jesus
Hope not.
Christ.
Okay, the same 4 people as earlier, fine. Well, that's where this was filmed up there. Yeah. And sometimes, and I take the group up here. We actually, when we're touring Beit She'an, a lot of us will go up. It's like, it's 1,000 stairs. It's quite a truck. But we make it up, and then we were up here, and then we come back down and meet the group.
They've got a little earphone, like it'll give you a little tour up there.
It's a great spot. Where are we going next, honey?
Okay, well, it looks like we've got the
Yardenette?
Jordan River. I don't know if it's a duplicate or...
Okay, well, we already did Yardenette.
Yeah, it looks like a duplicate.
Oh, it's a duplicate. Yeah.
Let's go to Qumran.
Ooh, let's go to Qumran. So we've left Beit She'an. Remember, we're in the Jordan Valley, the great African Rift. We're heading south to the Dead Sea. So now you can see the landscape has radically transformed from green and lush to absolute barren desert. We are at the lowest spot on earth, the Dead Sea. And we're coming to the city of Qumran.
Yeah. In 1947, a young Bedouin boy is walking in the desert with his sheep and goats, and he was 12, and he had 10 sheep and 10 goats. He was grown up already. And in the evening, when he's about to go back to his tent, he's counting the sheep and the goats, and he realized that one of the sheep is missing. And you know, in the Bedouin way of life, for 10 camels and 10 sheep, you can buy a wife. So he knows he better find that little tiny sheep, and he's looking all over and he couldn't find the sheep. And then he took some stones and he said, you know, there are some caves which have an opening from the top and from the side. So I'm going to take some rocks, said the young Bedouin, and I'm going to throw it from the top into the cave. And if the sheep fell into the cave, when the little stone is going to hit the floor, the sheep is going to get scared and she's going to move and they're going to hear the bell. And I know that that's where the sheep is. And in the fourth or the fifth cave, when he was throwing the rock inside, he heard something was smashing. And a sheep is not supposed to smash. So his curiosity rose and he went down, and by walking down, he found most likely one of the most amazing findings that we found in this country in the last few hundred years. Over there were 7 jars. One jar was smashed. The other one had the lid. Inside was sort of a paper wrapped in a towel. But he didn't care about it, but he went back to his tent and he told his brother, you know, I saw those jars. And the 3 brothers decided to come in the morning, and they went, you see the opening over here? They went from here down, and over here there were seven jars. One of them was smashed with 7 scrolls right over here. And they took them out, and when they came back to the tent, the father said, let's go to Bethlehem, maybe we can sell them for a few pennies. And they went to one of those antique dealers that was really a shoemaker, but antique dealer on the side, and he gave them, he said, well, the paper was nothing, and he gave them $35 for each jar. Talk about 1947, a lot of money. And this antique dealer looked at those papers and said, well, it looks like an old Assyrian language. Let's call the bishop of the Assyrian community here in Bethlehem, and maybe he wants to buy them. And the bishop showed up. Right away he realized it's not Assyrian, it's biblical Hebrew. And he said, okay, I'll take them. And he said, what's about the jars? I said, okay, I'll take 2 jars. And he paid, I think, $100 for a jar and a few $100 for every scroll. And he took them back to his church. And then he called Professor Sukenik from the University. And he said, Professor, you must come. You'll never believe what I found here. And the Professor Sukenik from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem showed up. He looked at the scrolls and he said, oh, my dear friend, I don't want to break your heart. It's fake. Fake? Said the bishop, what are you talking about? I just paid so much money. And the professor said, there's no way that the papyrus is going to last 2,000 years. I'm sure it's a fake. But you know what? To be on the safe side, let me take 1 or 2 parchment just to check it in laboratories. He came back to the university. He gives the girl the parchment, say, hey, sweetie, I know it's fake. Just to be on the safe side, can you verify it? And he goes back to his work. And 2 days later, he gets a phone call or a call, Professor, please come to the laboratory. So he showed up in the laboratory, and the girl says, Professor, have a seat, please. You want some water? I said, what goes on? And she said, I want you to know, she said, the little parchment that you brought me is authentic. I said, whoa. So he's rushing to Bethlehem, and the bishop said, what are you doing here? I said, I want to buy the scrolls. And he said, with the money you have, I can give you maybe 2 scrolls, but because we're good friends, I'll give you 1 long scroll and 2 short ones. By the way, the long one was the scroll of Isaiah. And he gave them 3 scrolls. And the morning after, or the evening after, the UN decided in what you call the partition plan, they divide the country between the Jews and the Arabs, riots, war, fire. And the professor couldn't make it back to Bethlehem. And 6 months later, when things are coming down a little bit, Professor Sukenik is coming back to Bethlehem, and the bishop said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm here to buy the remaining 4 scrolls. And the bishop said, Professor, you'll never believe me. You'll never believe me. I have no clue where they are. What do you mean? I said, some people came to us. Look at it. I've even people from 2 universities. A few nights ago, I heard something was smashing, and I was sure it's my cat pushing my ashtray on the floor. But when I woke up, I found out they were stolen. And we started to look for them using every source in the world, from the Israeli army, Israeli Mossad, FBI, Interpol. Everybody's looking for the scrolls, and we couldn't find them. So we came to the conclusion that someone stole them in order to get rid of them, which made sense. But we were happy. We had 3. So we said, beautiful, we're going to build them a special part in the museum. And a few years went by, and suddenly in February of 1952, about 4 years later, someone placed a small ad in the Wall Street Journal that said, for sale, 4 Dead Sea Scrolls. You couldn't believe it. And the guy had such a sense of humor, he wrote down at the bottom, very suitable for educational purposes. Come on, it's stolen. What do you mean educational? Anyway, so we send the son of Professor Sukenik, his name is Professor Yadin, to New York to buy the remaining 4 scrolls. And the guy said, I'm sorry, I don't deal with Jews. So we found a middleman that he was willing to deal with. And after a short negotiation and after verifying that these are the authentic 4 scrolls, the Israeli government purchased the remaining 4 scrolls for $250,000, which is like $25 million today. When the Bedouin in the desert found out, wow, so much money for paper, usually the Bedouins are the ones who steal cars and bring drugs to the country. You know what? For 2 years, nobody had this car stolen. We had no drugs. All the Bedouins were here on the hills looking for scrolls. Seriously. Like you had the rush for gold, we had the rush for scrolls. We had something too. Anyway, so, and you know what? Those Bedouins found tons of scrolls. They found 880 scrolls and over 25,000 parchment with pieces of scrolls. Matter of fact, we found the whole Bible 7 times. The whole Bible, except for some chapter from Habakkuk and so on, but the whole Bible 7 times. And of course, it's from the 1st century and BC and from the 1st century AD, from the time of Christ. We always wondered what words Jesus used when he was reading from Isaiah 61 in the synagogue in Nazareth on that day when they were trying to push him from the cliff. We know exactly what version he used because we have it. We have the Bible from 2,000 years ago, the original text that Jesus is using for teaching and preaching. And of course, everything was found over here in the area of Qumran. So of course we came here in this cave. We call it cave number 4. So when we come over here, we actually goes through the little village that over here lived a bunch of Jews who lived like monks in the desert. And of course, when one morning the people of Jerusalem woke up and said, the Romans are coming. And the Romans might set on fire our archive and our libraries. So a group of Jews took the whole archive they had and they started to put it in the caves around the desert just to hide it there until the war is over and then to come back and take it. And the same bunch of Jews who lived over here that we don't know who they are. Some people like to call them different names. I'm not going to go into it. The same people that live and say, wait a second, why are they hiding their scrolls? Let's take our scrolls as well. And they took 7 from their own scrolls, including the book of Isaiah, and they put it in the cave. And they were there for 2,000 years until the Bedouin boy who was looking for his little sheep was throwing the rocks inside, and we found it. So today we have the original scrolls from 2,000 years ago. It's amazing. And
it's out of this world amazing. Because for years people, how do we know the Bible's true? I mean, come on, so many copies over so many centuries. I mean, something's got to be messed up. And the critics said that right up until 1947.
Exactly.
When that Bedouin boy found scrolls, and then subsequently, 4 or 5 years later, when we have the entire Bible, virtually word for word, what we have today was written and found. I mean, it's just...
Wasn't that like 8,000 Hebrew manuscripts, 5,000 Greek manuscripts?
That's the Textus Receptus. That's correct.
Yeah, listen, if you're going, the oldest, Jewish people never throw away Bible. They never throw away. It's getting old. They don't take it. Okay, bad. Let's put it in the garbage. Jewish people take the Bible scroll and they put it in the attic of the synagogue. They let it die over there. And 2 German archaeologists knew about the Jewish habit of putting things in the attic, so they went to the synagogue in Cairo. And they found a Bible scroll which was, at that time, 600 or 700 years old. Suddenly, we find a Bible which is 2,000 years old. So if I have a Bible which is 2,000 years old and I have a Bible from what shall I do? Compare it to see if they match in a way. But they don't match in a way. They are identical word by word. Amen. So it means the version that we have today is identical. I mean, we added 4 letters to the Hebrew alphabet. I mean, we write the ending letter a little different, but it's word by word identical.
And you can see the scroll. When we go to Israel, we go to the Israeli Museum. They have the Shrine of the Book. They built a special building to house the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the entire scroll of Isaiah is rolled out.
Amazing.
And you can read it today. You can read it.
You can read Hebrew.
You can read Hebrew, you can read the scroll.
You know, we made the Hebrew language a little more modern. I mean, about 100 years ago, a guy by the name of Ben Yehuda said, okay, let's make it more easier to use. But I can take today a first grader in Israel who can read the alphabet and can write and read them and say, read, and he can read it fluently because we use the same language that we used 2,000 years ago. The Hebrew today is identical to the Hebrew from 2,000 years ago. The Hebrew that I speak with here, it is, of course, is much more developed and it's modern and so on. Even though that it's not what we speak is not what our kids speak. I don't understand my kids. Okay, they have their own
None
Hebrew.
of us do.
By the way,
And you will find sababa in the Bible.
that's one, no sababa.
No
By the
sababa.
way, even in English, I talk to people and people, we're going to FedEx it to you. What do you mean to FedEx? We're going to Google it. I mean, this is not English, but that's what you, and that's exactly the change that we have in Hebrew. A lot of Hebrew words that I don't know what they are. So sometimes I'm sitting with my granddaughter and she talks and I look at her, so I don't know what she's talking about. I have no idea. But this is a Hebrew today is identical to the Hebrew from the time of Jesus, and that's amazing because it didn't change at all. Yeah.
Where are we going now, Sally?
In Gedi.
Oh.
Love
yes.
it.
In Gedi, just a few miles away from Qumran, just a few short miles. And if you need to go to the restroom or whatever, please go ahead. I know the
gonna
break
skip
was at
that break.
2:30, but we're not breaking. We're just going to keep rolling through. So we're going to have a break for ice cream pretty quick, though. Don't worry about that.
Oh, ibex.
Oh, the ibex.
These are the two male.
How can you tell the difference between the male and the female, Roni?
My first ever tour, my English was quite poor. Not it's so great now, but it was very sort of a poor. And we went to Gedi, and you see, you can see that if the female have very short horns and the male have longer horns, and the older they are, they get a little thicker and they get a beard. You can see the male ibex has a beard. This is a male. You see the beard?
Yeah.
Okay, you see the longer horns? But I was asked, so what's the difference between the male and the female? And with my very poor English, I said, well, you can see the male is more horny. And they said, really? I said, sure, you can see it from a mile away. And they were happy. I had no idea why they were laughing. I mean, they were so happy, and they were more happy about the fact that I don't know why they're laughing. Now I know. Yeah, Gedi. This is the place where.
Sally? Click a button.
I didn't touch it.
Click it.
I promise.
You see, there's nothing in Gedi. So
That's all you get.
Gedi is the place where you
went
want to talk
blank.
about
Nothing happened.
David.
No, it just
When
went
we go
blank.
now in Gedi is just a few miles. Oh, there's
There
one of
you
those
are.
ibex goats, and oh, there we are. Okay, you got it.
There's a blank spot on the
Now in
video.
Gedi, like I said, is just a few short miles from Qumran. You're in the middle of the Dead Sea area. It's like the lunar landscape, and then out of nowhere, you walk up this little valley. And boom, there's a waterfall with fresh, clear, clean water and caves and vegetation. There's little animals like this. They're called conies. They look like rabbits with no ears. And there's the ibex, the goats, the sheep that are there. So there's a great water source, fresh, clean water, food source. And this area is where David ran to. Remember when Saul was chasing David out of jealousy? When the Israelites were singing that Saul had killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands? And because Saul was jealous, he began to pursue David here in the wilderness in 1 Samuel chapter 21. And he came to En-Gedi. That's in 1 Samuel 24. So En-Gedi, the spring of the wild goat, is where he found solace, where he found rest, security, if you will. And of course, Saul tracked him down here, and we're told that Saul went into one of the caves, and there's caves all over the place there. There's some up high here, but there's some down low on the sides. And it says Saul went in to relieve himself. He was going to the bathroom, and David happened to be in that cave. And David's guy said, hey, there he is. Go get him. Kill him. And David cut the corner of Saul's robe. Remember that? And so Saul left out, And David said, hey, my king. He's go, oh, there you are. David, come here and get what's coming to you. Why? What'd I do? You know. And he said, I could have killed you. And he showed him a corner of his robe, but I didn't. And he uttered those famous words, touch not the Lord's anointed. And David recognized an important truth, that vengeance was going to be God's, not his. And you know, Paul echoes that, by the way, in Romans 12:19. He said, my dear brethren, do not vindicate yourself one to another, but give place to wrath. For vengeance is mine. I will repay, thus saith the Lord. And it happened right here at Gedi. And David, remember in Psalm 22? David draws a powerful contrast between En Gedi, where there's fresh, clean, living water, and the Dead Sea. Now, while the Dead Sea looks beautiful, it's dead for a reason. It's 37% mineral content. It is, you know, the ocean's only
3%.
about 3 or 4% salty. 37% the Dead Sea. That's why nothing lives in it. But it looks good. It looks refreshing. But it only brings death. But the water in En Gedi brings life. And in Psalm chapter 42, verses 1 and 9, he talks about how the deer pants for the water brook, how my soul pants for you, O God. And what a contrast between life and death, between the living water at En Gedi and the dead water at the Dead Sea. And when you're standing there, it's just amazing to see that those biblical truths come to life. It's a great place, super good place. Now, unfortunately, one year there was a big fire there. Yeah. And all the greenery was burnt, and they shut it down. We weren't able to get in there. But it is growing back. It's green. It's lush. Beautiful. It's beautiful today. Beautiful. It's amazing. In fact, one year, we were there with Pastor Chuck, and it was closed because of the flash flood warnings.
Oh, that happens a lot.
But that happens quite often. And we went to the other side where that little museum is up there, and we were able to look down into it and still see it.
The observation point, right?
Yeah, the observation point. But it's a beautiful, beautiful place. I love it. I love it so much. And it's quite a hike up there, too, by the way. It's not for the faint of heart. You got to really walk your way up there. But you can see the ibex, the sheep, and the conies.
The nice place about this site is the sidewalk goes about halfway up. So there's a small waterfall.
But then it stops, but then you walk up.
So you can go back a little ways and still see it.
Yeah. So even in a wheelchair, you can get up there a little ways and see some of it, which is really nice. The National Park System has made it really nice. You can stop right here
there.
And see you stop here and see the water down. But the big waterfall's way back up on in there, and you got to scale these mountains. It's quite a journey. Super fun.
Great site.
Very biblical, yep.
Okay, where are we going now, Sally?
Looks like Masada.
Masada.
You know the place where I beat you up the snake trail?
Now, Masada is just a little past En Gedi, so we're still at the Dead Sea, obviously. Now, there's a snake path. There's a trail that you can walk up there, and it is straight up. It is amazingly tough. I was getting ready. I was going to go up at this trip. I was getting ready for it, and then the trip got canceled. I thought, well, you know, maybe next time. But a long time ago, Sally and I walked up it, and she thinks, there it is. See the people on it?
Yep.
It snakes all the way back and forth, all the way to the top. It's crazy. And she thinks she beat me up it.
I did. Huh, Roni?
I started back a lot further than she did
that's what
when
it
they
was.
clicked the timer. She was like way up there, like, okay, I've started now. But I don't think she beat me.
It's
quite a hike.
I'm not going to. Masada, I think, is the only place in Israel that you see it through my eyes, and mainly.
Let me say one thing.
Yes.
Herod the Great built this. It was his winter palace. In case he ever wanted to go there, the amenities there. There's bathhouses, storehouses, indoor bathrooms, beautiful cisterns to hold just gazillions of gallons of water. He could live up there forever and be absolutely self-contained, but he probably was never there. He just built it in case he wanted to go there. But the story that Roni shares about Masada and current Israeli military is incredible, based on what happened there many, many years ago.
Okay, I'll start with the end. Because I said that that's the only place that usually on the tour, that's the only place you see through my eyes, mainly because it's a site that was surrounded by the Romans, and eventually they had the two options, either to become slaves and sex slaves of the Romans, or not to fall in the hands of the Roman. And with the influence of a very charismatic leader, they decided to commit suicide. And 970 people committed suicide. When the Roman came in the morning, they were shocked because they didn't expect it. And Josephus Flavius, who was a historian from that time, he said that there was no happiness in the Roman army. They won a battle, but they didn't want to win it like that. And the Roman took the place after a few months of siege, after they built a ramp, and they were able to break the walls and break into the site. And this is the story. Usually when we walk around, I'll show what Herod did, built there. Herod was afraid from the Jews and the non-Jews. He was afraid from everybody, and he was said, in case of an uprising, I'm going to run to the desert, and I'm going to take a little hill that is surrounded by dry riverbeds, and nobody can really climb up because it's there's a cliff over here, and nobody can really come up. And over here, he built himself a fortress, which is a big palace, 2 palaces, bathhouses, storage rooms. I mean, just to have good time until the Romans are going to come and assist him. And later on, when Jerusalem collapsed and the Romans took over Jerusalem, 960, 70 people didn't want to be under the Roman. They wanted to be free so they can worship their own God. So they came here and they lived as a community. And they could live here forever, but they kept on attacking Roman convoys. Eventually, the Roman had enough, and they sent their army. And the Roman, after a short siege, took over, finding out that all the people committed suicide. And in Israel, it was very common that when you join the army, you climb up, and over there you declare your loyalty to the state of Israel and to the army and to the state. Just because when Masada collapsed 2,000 years ago, it was the end of the Jewish state. And now when there is a Jewish state, they bring the young people to Masada, and over there they declare their loyalty. And they take a responsibility to say, Masada will never fall again. Masada shall never fall again, which means as long as there is Masada, there's going to be a state of Israel. Just symbolic. And I went up there too when I was a young soldier. And this was very, very powerful. Very, very powerful for me. So we take the groups over there and we walk around. It's amazing to see how much effort Herod is going to put in a place that he has never been to, just because he was afraid so much from the Jews and the non-Jews. He wasn't only afraid from the Jews and the non-Jews, he was afraid from a young queen that was down south in Egypt. You know who I'm talking about? Cleopatra. And that's why he built himself 4 identical fortresses. We have 4 Masadas in the country. This is the famous one because of the suiciding of the people, but there are 3 more. One of them is a little bit up north, and that's where they kept later on John the Baptist for 11 months before they cut his head off. But the story over here is powerful. Herod is afraid of Cleopatra because she is the girlfriend of Marcus Antonius, Mark Antony. And each time after they make love, she says, "Hey, Antonio, give me some land, give me." And Mark Antony taking land from Herod and he gives it to Cleopatra. And Herod is terrified from her because people thought she was beautiful. Because we all remember that Elizabeth Taylor was Cleopatra once, and everybody think that Cleopatra was amazing. Just so you know, about 5 years ago, we found 2 coins in Egypt with the face of Cleopatra. Ugly, push, terrible. Really ugly. It's good to be the queen. Anyway,
it's good to be the queen.
So this is a classical fortress in the desert. So we like to go there. I like to show what Herod built. I like to show how much effort he's going to put in the place that he has never been to or never tried to be. But the most of the story about how the Jewish people committed suicide instead of falling in the hands of the Romans. This is Masada in very few words.
Yeah. And then what? Because in AD 70, Titus with his 5th, 12th, and 15th Roman legion in AD 70 destroyed Jerusalem. and then laid siege to Masada. And of course, the Jews they killed themselves rather than fall into that. So every year, the Israeli army, the new recruits coming out of boot camp, every year, they go here.
Yep. So every time when I come to Masada, it's been a few weeks since I joined the Israeli army, but every time when I come to Masada, my first thing, my eyes goes to the left because I know exactly the little U shape that we stood there in order to, yeah.
So the armies, the new recruits who are going into the IDF, they come up here early in the morning, and their mantra is never fall again. And they never fall again, never fall again. And
it's a very heavy commitment on 18 years old to take on your shoulder to make sure that your state is going to stay.
Yeah, it's heavy. Awesome. Okay, we have to keep moving. Dead Sea. Again, the lowest place on earth, some 1,290 feet below sea level, lowest place on earth. Incredible. Anyway.
But look at the Dead Sea, the aqua blue. Nothing lives there. Now look at the green. Freshwater ponds are popping up.
Yep. The sweet water's popping up because the Dead Sea isn't getting much water because Israelis use it coming out of the Sea of Galilee, so very little water goes into the Dead Sea, and of course there's no outlet to it. And so when the water subsides, there's not a lot of pressure, like Roni said, and it causes the other water to come up. On this time, it's the sweet water coming up.
Right.
Dead Sea. Okay.
I like it very much because I like to see how people react when they go to the water. It's 36, 37% salt. You can imagine a third of the water is salt, and you go to the water and you float. And even if you can't swim, whatever, I mean, people can lie in the water and hold the paper and read, and it's amazing. And you come out and your skin is so smooth and so nice. And usually where we go and swim, there is sometimes they put mud, and you cover yourself with mud, and the idea of swimming in 36% salt is incredible. And so that we spend 1 or 2 nights, right?
Yeah, we spend a couple nights there. And we go to a really, really nice resort hotel at the Dead Sea. They have their own private beach.
Right.
They have an indoor heated swimming pool with Dead Sea water, spa treatments galore. It's a great place. We spend a couple of days there, and it's a great time to refresh. And there's
the hotel right there.
Yeah, there's the hotel right there. Private beaches.
It has a little private island that everybody goes there.
Yeah, and there's packets of Dead Sea mud processed, so it's very clean and very nice. And you put the mud on you, exfoliates, and then you go in the water and rinse it off. And the magnesium, it's not just salt. There's magnesium in the water, and so you get that oily feel. It's really smooth. And Ronnie's so funny.
This is such a rough time.
He goes, he tells us about the Dead Sea. He goes, and you know what? People go there for skin treatments all the time, psoriasis and everything, and you get healed up. And we get on the bus, we get ready to leave, Ronnie. He goes, hey, where's my group? And they're going, he goes, oh, because you guys look 10 years younger coming out of the Dead Sea.
Yeah. I have to say that me as an Israeli going there, I don't like it because it's warm. So I have a feeling that I don't like warm water at sea. I like chilled water, cold water. But the feeling of floating is, people come and say, what an amazing thing. And we never thought it's going to be like that. I mean, the fact that you
float above the water.
You lose control over your body because the water carries you up. Sometimes we even have a hard time to go back, put your feet in the water.
Put your feet
this is the hotel. And by the way, every time we see white, it's not ice or snow, it's salt.
Salt.
Yep.
Okay, where are we going next?
Beersheba.
Beersheba. Well of the Oath. Well of the Sevens. Real quickly, we got to keep rolling.
Yeah, we
got to get into Jerusalem today.
We have 2 more days worth of sites.
Okay, I'll do it very. Beersheba.
Between the pastor and the tour guide, it's like, okay, we're never going to get out of here.
No, he made a mistake. He gave me a microphone. The hardest operation in Israel is to detach the microphone from the hand of the guide when the pastor is next to him. Anyway, Beersheba, Tel Sheba is the place connected to Abraham, Sarah. That's where he sent Hagar, the Egyptian mistress, to the desert. That's where Ishmael was born. That's the whole connection with Isaac. And for us, it's an amazing place. That's a place where you understand how people live in the desert, how water is crucial. You see, there's a big well over there that they take water to feed up the sheep. And what they did in Israel, they took the Tel and they completely restored it. So it's about 10 minutes walk through the Tel, and then we can talk about the biblical events over there. And we end the tour. Oh, this is the well, and this is where you put the water into the little manger over here. Trough, so the animal can drink. There's a story in the Bible that talks about Jacob running away from Esau. And he goes far, far, far away, all the way up north, and he sees a beautiful girl by the well. Do you know the story? He said, "Ooh, you look hot. What's your name, sweetie?" And she says, my name is Rachel. He said, "Whoa, you are really, can I see you later?" And she said, "I don't think so. If you really want to see me, you have to speak to my father." I said, "What's your father?" His name is Lavan or Laban. He said, "Oh, I know him. He's my great uncle." So he comes to Laban and says, "Listen, I saw your daughter. She's hot. Can I see her?" So, in my tradition, if you want to have my daughter, you have to work for her. So, sure, no problem. What's the big deal? It says 7 years. 7 years, Jacob. Oh, man, this is going to be terrible. And I said, but she's so pretty. I don't mind. And for 7 years, he's working as a slave, cutting, cleaning up, washing the windows, working the farm. For 7 years, come to 11, say, 11, a deal is a deal. Give me your daughter. I said, sure. So there's a wedding and the catering and the music, everything is running. And then it comes to the wedding and he puts the ring and she says, I do. And he lifts the veil to kiss the wife. And it wasn't Rachel. It was Leah. And he said, hey, Laban, what goes on here? What is it? What is going on here? And Laban says, I forgot to tell you, in my tradition, you can marry the young one before the older one is married. He said, but I want the young one. He said, sure, no problem. 7 years, please. And the story keeps on going and going and going. And after 7 years, again, there's a wedding, whatever. And just before he puts the ring, he stops. If you ever go to a Jewish wedding today, just before you put the ring and you say, I marry you according to Moses' law, whatever, you stop and you lift the veil. Ask her. I want to make sure. Anyway, why? Because 3,800 years ago, okay, when he was standing over there and he wanted to make sure that Jacob has the right wife, he lifted the veil and said, okay, this one I like, poof, mazel tov, and things are going on. But I wanted to know that tradition starts years ago, and everything starts by exactly this part where he saw he said, let me move the stone from the veil. Anyway, so this is where we're going to go through. It's a beautiful city, small, short walk. And like in the desert city, okay, I say, okay, very nicely, but what happens if someone is going to take over the water and we can get from the city to the little water place over here? So what they did in Beersheba 3,000 years ago, they dug a tunnel all the way from the city down to the water, to the little spring which is under, which we walk through, which is really powerful. Yeah. And it's when you walk in the land in a biblical city like Tel Sheba, which is so connected to Abraham and Hagar, and you stand over and say, wow, here's the desert. You understand exactly what the Bible means when it says Hagar left and walked to the desert and was waiting for the angel of death to kill his son, whatever. It's right over here in Tel Sheba.
We left the Sea of Galilee, we came south down the Jordan Valley, and we were going up, and we went to the Dead Sea. We're going up through the wilderness of Arad to Beersheba, and now from Beersheba, we're going to continue our journey back toward Jerusalem. I think we'll probably come to Valley of Elah.
Yep.
Is that where we're going next, Sally?
That's where we're at. Beit Shemesh.
Beit Shemesh. Okay.
Then Valley of Elah.
Oh, Beit Shemesh. Now, Beth Shemesh, let's see, what do you got there in Beth Shemesh?
So with the Philistines.
Yeah. And Beth Shemesh is located in the Sorek Valley. It's a great archaeological find because there, from Beth Shemesh, the Israelites were fighting the Philistines because we're in the Philistine land now. You have Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, Gaza, and Ekron, the 5 Philistine cities. Now, the Israelites were fighting the Philistines and lost badly. They lost thousands of IDF soldiers. So they came up with the idea, hey, let's bring the Ark of the Covenant into the battle. Because, the Ark of the Covenant, that's the dwelling place of God. So the idea is they're bringing God into the battle. Well, God didn't think this was such a good idea. So the Israelites got defeated, and the Philistines snagged the Ark of the Covenant. And the Philistines had a great victory. Yay, we captured their God, basically. We got the Ark of the Covenant.
It's all in 1 Samuel 4 through 6.
Yeah, 1 Samuel 4, 5, and 6. It's a great story. And so the Philistines got all excited. They got the Ark, but there was a problem. God sent 2 plagues to the Philistine cities that had the Ark. One plague was a plague of rats. The second plague was a plague of tumors.
Hemorrhoids.
Now, in the Hebrew, it's hemorrhoids. Now, the Philistines didn't think this was such a good idea. So they let the Ark of the Covenant go to another Philistine city. As I just mentioned, there are 5 of them. Every city that the Ark went to, they all experienced rats and hemorrhoids. Yeah. So they finally got the bright idea to send it back to the children of Israel. So they said, you know what? We think this is probably from their God, but maybe not. So let's put the Ark on a cart, milk cart. We'll tie 2 milk cows to it. And if the cows just meander and wander, we know it's not God. But if it goes straight to Beth Shemesh, we know it's the hand of God. And they said, we shouldn't send the Ark back empty-handed. We should send an offering with the Ark to appease the gods. And so they made 5 golden rats. Yeah. And 5 golden tumors. Hemorrhoids.
Yeah, I know.
Now, I don't know who posed for that, but... So they put them on the cart, and the cart made a beeline to Beth Shemesh right here, down the Sorek Valley. And the children of Israel were so happy. They thought, yay, we got the Ark back. So what did they do? They looked inside the Ark. Now, it says 50,000 died, but it might be a copyist error. There's probably not 50,000 of them died at that point, but there was certainly a bunch of them because they looked inside the Ark. Question. What was inside the Ark? Anybody? The what?
Law.
Yeah, according to Hebrews 9, chapter 9, verse 4, it was Aaron's budding rod, a golden jar of manna, and the law, the 2 tablets of stone. And boy, what a picture that paints. They looked inside to the law, and they died. In 2 Corinthians 3:6, Paul said that the letter kills. The law kills, but the Spirit gives life. The problem is they were looking to the ark of the Lord, not the Lord of the ark. And I think sometimes we make the same mistake. We look to the house of the Lord rather than the Lord of the house. We look to the people of the Lord rather than the Lord of the people. Follow me? And it all happened here in Beth Shemesh. Great excavation.
Also, Samson's birthplace.
Right across the Sorek Valley is the city of Zorah. Zorah. Remember the story of Samson? It happened right there. And
where he put the fox's tails on fire.
That's Timnah. Right down the Sorek Valley around from Zorah is Timnah. And all of that happened right there with the story of Samson. All of the incredible, powerful things he did and all of the problematic things he did. And it all happened right there. But the story of Samson, even though we're right here, what really blessed me was Manoah, his father. Because Manoah, the father of Samson, when God said, you're going to have a child, he prayed. he said, what should I do with this child? Good thing. God, what shall I do with this child? Follow me? And God said he's to be a Nazirite from Numbers chapter 6. He's to be set apart. He's to be consecrated. And I think as a parent, it's good to say, God, what should I do with my children? How do you want me to teach and train and raise them up? But then to take it a step further, Lord, what do you want from me? Because God wants us to be set apart. He wants us to be consecrated, just like Samson. It all happened right here. Amazing. Where are we at now, Sal?
Valley of Elah.
Ooh, the Valley of Elah.
Right around the corner.
Right around the corner from Beth Shemesh, just a couple miles away, is the Valley of Elah. Now, in the Valley of Elah, there's two mountains. There's Mount Azekah and there's Mount Sokah. And you remember the story of David and Goliath? That's right here in the Valley of Elah. The Philistines were on Mount Azekah. The Israelis were on Mount Sokah. And every day they taunted each other, send out your best guy, we'll send out our best guy, and whoever wins, that's who will be in charge. And of course, they had Goliath. Nobody wanted to fight Goliath. But one day, a little shepherd boy by the name of David came over the hill from Bethlehem with some cheese and some bread for his 5 brothers and the IDF, that's the Israeli Defense Force. And
Little shepherd boy.
And David says, hey, why aren't you going fighting this guy? And they go, well, look at him. He's 9 foot 9 inches tall. He's covered from head to toe with steel. And David goes, I'll fight him. And David, you're too small. You're not a man of war. And David, in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 47, he said, the battle belongs to the Lord. You come at me with spear and sword, but I come against you in the name of the living God. And David went down to the Valley of Elah, down to the brook. It's right here. And he picked up 5 smooth stones. Why 5? Did David lack faith? No. David exhibited wisdom because we're told in, where was that? Oh, that's Jerusalem.
Sorry.
In 2 Samuel, and I forget the chapter.
17.
2 Samuel 17, Goliath.
1 Samuel 17.
1 Samuel. That Goliath had 4 sons. So he picked up 5 smooth stones. He didn't lack faith. He exhibited wisdom because he knew once he killed Goliath, the 4 sons were going to come after him, And David picked up that stone and slung it. And of course, you know the story. And he went over and cut the guy's head off. It was a great victory. And it's all about a man of faith at this point. Faith and prudence, wisdom and faith working together because God's given us a brain and we need to use it, but we also walk by faith. Valley of Elah.
Jerusalem, Mount Scopus.
You forgot to tell them that that's the only place I pray.
Ronnie and Irit made me a little book, a beautiful little picture album book of some of our pictures from Israel over the last 25, 26 years. And when we're at the Valley of Elah, I'm swinging the sling, I'm getting ready to show everybody how it's done. And he wrote on the page, the only time that the tour guide prays.
That was good.
That was hilarious. And I got to tell you, on one of our trips, I practiced that sling, okay? I made it myself. I built it, and it was built for me, and I was practicing. I got pretty good with it. I got to admit that. I was very proud of myself because there's a tree in the Valley of Elah on the other side of the little valley. And I would swing it, and I would hit that tree quite often. But on one trip, I swung it, and I missed the tree. Okay, I'll try it again. I missed it like 3 or 4 times, and Sally goes, let me try. I go, okay, Sally. I give her the sling. She bangs the tree the first time. The crowd goes wild. I didn't hear the end of it for the rest of the tour.
For the rest of your life.
The rest of my life, yeah, okay, that's true.
Okay, this is Jerusalem, Mount Scopus.
Mount Scopus.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let me share real quick. Okay. Mount Scopus is the northernmost extension of the Mount of Olives, the Mount of Olives. And when we come to Jerusalem, after all of our travels, we come to Mount Scopus, because you can see in the background, it's higher than the Temple Mount, Mount Scopus, and it overlooks Jerusalem. And in ancient times, when pilgrims would make their way to Jerusalem, as we mentioned, Deuteronomy 16:16, 3 of the 7 feasts required mandatory attendance for every Jew. So they would come and they would stop and they would look upon Jerusalem and there would be a blessing. Roni, tell us about that. The blessing.
So in the Jewish way of thinking, when you come to Jerusalem, you come out, today we come with the bus, we get off the bus and everything is perfect, but 2,000 years ago it was a trip, 10, 12 weeks. Many people didn't make it, many people didn't survive, many people were attacked on the way to Jerusalem. And so when they came to Jerusalem, they stood over there overlooking the city, and they said 3 prayers. And the prayers are, one of them is like the prayer with the wine. We thank God for giving us the fruit of the vineyard. And we have another prayer that is the fruit, the bread, giving us the bread out of the earth. And the third prayer, we thank the Mighty One for making us able to come to Jerusalem and come to the temple. And that's when we stand over there and we say it. For me, it's very important. I remember that I did it for the first time, I think with Pastor Clark, when we came up to Jerusalem, and he asked me, is there anything special you do when you come to Jerusalem? Say, yeah, if you were a Jewish group, I would have stopped and said the blessings, because that's what Jesus did as a Jew. He said, he did? I said, yes. He said, can we do it? I said, sure. I remember that we stood over there and I said the blessing in Hebrew, and they repeated after me. And by the way, there was another guy that saw me doing that, and he reported on me to the Ministry of Tourism that I offend the Christian groups that I'm with. But it doesn't matter. But for me, it's very powerful, because when I stand over there, I keep on saying that, when Jesus came to the city and he did the same blessing, we do the same thing. We are in the footstep of Christ, so this is really a must. And I remind people that we always say that, all 3 religions believe that they were born in Jerusalem, but as a matter of fact, Islam was born somewhere in Mecca, Medina, in Saudi Arabia. Judaism, with all the respect, was born in Sinai, 10 Commandments, Moses. The only religion that was really born in Jerusalem is Christianity. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, we're going to walk around Jerusalem. It sounds like I'm talking very high, but you're going to feel very comfortable. You're going to go to places that you have never been there, but you're going to feel that you've been there because you read and you know about the places, and you're going to feel like home. And I really welcome people to come to Jerusalem and say, welcome home, because I mean that this is going to be home. And 3 days later, or 4 days later, on the way to the airport, people say, you know what? You were right. We really felt that we're coming home. So Jerusalem is a home, not because it sounds nice, because it is true. And for me, walking through the ceremony, when we are walking through the three blessings, I think it's very powerful for me.
It's so powerful. It's so moving.
And usually when we at the end of the tour, people are talking on the bus. What did you like? And this and the baptismal and things like that are really making the tour very powerful. So this is the entrance to Jerusalem. When we do the blessing, we're holding little cups with grape juice and the bread, and we do say
it's just like communion with the bread and the cup, but it's what they did 2,000 years ago coming into, It's blessing God for the cup and blessing God for the food, for the bread.
And in Hebrew.
In Hebrew, Ivrit.
Ken.
Yofi.
Okay, we'll do Mount of Olives and then take the little snack break for the
We should take a break
bars.
right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
We missed a break, so let's take a quick break.
Okay.
Ice cream bars outside, coffee, ice cream.